3000.
What he's doing. My name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today from a graffiti writer and a pottery person. What do you call someone who does pottery?
Potter, ceramicist.
A ceramicist.
At college, I guess they want you to treat yourself like a ceramicist, but I think of myself as a potter in traditional sense.
Okay.
Oh, well, as in I've learnt from tradition. I'm not a traditional potter. There's not many of them left in particularly the Western world anymore.
So what makes someone a traditional potter?
I just think that tradition passed down through generations.
So it has to be taught to you by someone else from the lineage, your same family?
Yeah, and when things were made actually for a function in a society, these days they become art objects and people are too scared to make what they get off a potter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different thing because of commerce. You can buy a cheap plastic factory-made thing from China and, it's just... Society's needs have changed.
We live in a very disposable culture.
Yeah, and you kind of want these handmade things to be disposable too, in a sense. I make things and price things so that they can be used, and you don't have to worry. And you prefer them to be used because that's part of their nature. They're not just a visual object. They're made for touching and things like that. If you're putting, say, a mug to your lips, there's not many things that you do that with. Maybe a plastic drink bottle, but other than that, they're pretty close objects, in a way.
Yeah,
I think. So
we're getting deep into the pottery stuff early. Let's talk.
Let's get back to the start.
Let's get back to the start. So we're joined today by New2, a graffiti writer from Melbourne, from the DMA crew. Do you want to tell us about how you got started in that culture? Whereabouts you grew up around Melbourne?
Yeah, well, I actually grew up all around Victoria. My mother worked for the military, what have you. So I actually found out about hip hop from TV in places like Wodonga and Warragul and all over the shop. And I started b-boying, I don't know, maybe 84 or something, but I'd heard... I'll just start with hip-hop as opposed to writing. I'd heard the message on the radio. Mm-hmm. I think it was on and we got it on a cassette. We could play in Mum's car. It was sort of on one of these 82, the winners or the hits. Those hit compilations I used to have.
I reckon I've got it, yep.
And I was just it just changed my world. I went from being a little Kiss fan with playing guitar on my tennis racket, jumping around on bed to what is this, And I think Buffalo Girls, similar time. So started to just tag your things, your cardboard, breakdance on, a cousin and I, and my brother and I were also interested. And then I just wanted to be in the city, what have you. I'd moved from parent to other relatives, things like this, and then I end up with my dad in on the Pakenham line. So for people that are outside of Melbourne or Australia, we've got a suburban metro system in Melbourne. It's not like a commuter system like you'd find in Europe, what have you, where we've got a metro in the centre of the city or something like that, and so we've got country trains and kind of a very sprawling metro system for a sprawling city. And anyway, so Pakenham line is just on the end of Dandenong line, and I was actually originally come from Dandenong line. I came from Dandenong, from Dandy North. Mm-hmm. And so did a big writer from Adelaide too, which is surprising. We were born 6 months apart in the same area. What? Probably same hospital as.
Different place, Dandenong then.
Yeah, all my family are from Dandy Noble Park. We actually owned a 5-acre farm where Yarraman Station is now.
Wow.
And
that's all built up now?
It's all it's all full suburb. And once I was much later in the piece, when I was writing in Melbourne for a fair while, I went up to, let's say, a big dandy writer's place, and as I got closer, I realised this is the next door neighbour of my grandparents. Where as kids, if we accidentally kicked a footy or something over, it was like, oh, and he'd, we're a bit scared to go over, like, what's this dude going to say,
A little bit older.
Yeah, and he turned out to be a very big train rider over here years and years later, which was a great coincidence. We were next door to each other all that time, like every holidays we were there.
And your grandparents still weren't there by the time you made that.
No, they'd sold it off, and then everything gets built into flats, what have you.
Yep.
So we got a street in Noble that's named after my grandma, stuff like that. So my uncles were all hoods around that area way before all these kind of,
Because it was semi-rural. It was rural back then. If you got a 5-acre farm, it's not even suburbia. That's just rural Melbourne.
Yeah, and like lots of areas where houses are now, it was all market garden, that sort of thing. Like during World War II, my uncles were going down there racking, trying to get enough food for the family, because Dad was away at war, that kind of thing. And yet they were hoods. One of my uncles was a really good racker. He still is up into his 70s or 80s or something. No, he's in his 80s, yeah.
Wow.
Funny as.
So then you're moving around, you're breaking, you're b-boying. You call it a b-boying or breaking?
Yeah.
Because I know a few people have said it that was called rap dance in the early days.
Yeah. Yeah, because you got to think hip-hop was so new then. It was like, rap crap, you listen to rap crap. And we were the ones that were...
embracing the rap crap.
Yeah, but we were the oppressed ones that, it's flipped now, like you had the more the bogue stuff, at least out where I was, if you're into rap crap or dressing like that, you're more likely to get belted for it or something.
Yep.
At these sort of times, I guess prison-type people would be listening to Akadaka, Rose Tattoo, these kinds of things. Yeah. And that's totally changed.
Yeah, for sure, yep.
Yeah.
So then you figure out that this is what you want to do. You're sourcing bits of information from TV, that sort of stuff, and then you think, I'm going to continue breaking, or maybe I'm going to do some of that graffiti stuff I'm seeing.
I just wasn't good enough at floor work. At the time, we were living in, I was in Wodonga, and a friend and I, and we actually got put in the Flying Fruit Fly Circus, and we were training with them. Wow. Like the pre-Circus Oz thing. Because it was just such a weird phenomena back then. You guys, like, people didn't know what they were seeing,
Yeah. It was just...
Especially in regional areas, So the kind of things we could source, as far as writing, it wasn't much, like, I didn't even when I was writing in Melbourne for years, I still hadn't seen Star Wars or anything,
Right. So you're just getting your idea of graffiti from seeing it, what's presented to you at face value in the street?
Not even. There were a few of us tagging and doing roller tags and that back then. I had these little government markers from one of my mum's military jobs, Government of Australia, and I'm bombing with them, pretty ironic. And things like, I think Picture Magazine had this at some stage there. This is probably when I was in Melbourne by then. Had little graffiti things, or there was this writing article in a French thing in Year 7 from France. Just these tiny little things like. But I was getting my lettering ideas off food packaging, particularly.
The way that they would join together, the way that they would connect and interact.
Just a bubbly letter and stuff, and I'd just learn off them. I remember that Lollygobble Bliss Bombs packet distinctly. I was sort of learning off that, and I was just doing my best to come up with what I could until, when I was 15, that's when I moved to the Pakenham line and started to venture out.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I think I first met Hayes and Ash. Mm-hmm. I heard on an episode that he said in the city. I'm not really sure. I was thinking it was out Dandenong way when I was trying to look at a trackside, but I could be wrong. I really can't remember. and started to get exposed to riding a bit on the Dandelion and then into the city.
Was he slightly older than you?
No, same
No,
age, I
same
think.
age. Right.
But I was like, it was interesting what Trem had to say on his thing. I felt very similar as that I'm on the periphery and I want to engage. I love this thing. And it was also this world that become this kind of, how do you put it, like I was moved around a lot from different relations and quite a bit of a troubled upbringing sort of thing. And then I moved into my dad's and they were just like, well, you can either get up at 5 a.m. or whatever it is and come to just caddy with and just follow me around the golf course, or you just got to be out of the house by the time your stepmother's up. So I'd have to be out. They give me $5. All right, we'll see you on Sunday evening. So from Saturday morning or Friday till Sunday, I wasn't allowed in the house.
Really?
Because Dad wasn't there, sort of thing.
Wow.
So $5, I think that might have bought 2 train tickets back then. I'm not sure, but obviously riders, you wouldn't buy a train ticket then. It can't be a bit frowned upon. And you knew your whole way around the system. So eventually, yes. So I'd survive on that and be exposed to riding. I think I had the blessing of meeting Tame in the city square. Mm-hmm. Tame and Cure, and at the time Cure he wrote Sticks. And so I met my first Belgrave people at that stage. So, and Cure was like, he's like, I had a long green army jacket, really long hair. He's like, are you a girl? I'm like, no. Pretty funny. That sums him up. He's funny as cheeky dude.
So you didn't look like a rider because you're wearing the army stuff. You've got the long hair.
I think the army thing was probably a Beat Street copy, but maybe I was always really interested in. Always have been in World War II and Vietnam history.
Because of the military upbringing.
Yeah, and I lived in a military town. A lot of dads there were all ex-Vietnam vets that you'd hear all crazy stories about their families. From PTSD kind of reactions to coming home, this kind of thing. I've been interested my whole life. I don't actually, I was probably just trying to be like B Street or something, probably as a silly little kid. I don't know. That'd be a great movie.
So once you meet these guys, have you developed the New2 name yet?
No. Okay. I was writing a name that I'm never going to mention. To anyone.
Really? You don't want to just... Okay.
Oh, no. It's just embarrassing. It's just a horrible name.
Okay.
I started hanging with those guys and Idem and Reem and another guy, Roy, who also wrote Mir. I can't remember, what was Roy? I can't remember Roy's other tag. But so now we had a couple of Broady guys. We had a couple of Belgrave guys. We had me from Dandy Pakenham. Then we had St Albans as well. We had Brink and earlier Mission. So we sort of had a bit of a all-city sort of crew going on. We could sort of get things from all directions because we all lived on the end of the lines. I think the end of the line phenomenon is pretty interesting, particularly in that post-USA period. A lot of the end of the line people, like the Frankston guys, etc., are the ones that really... I think you do things, you get up more earnestly, or you've also got end-of-line loops, which is a lot easier. These kind of things, The
train's not as busy when you're getting on before,
Yeah, you've... I think that sort of phenomenon, because I think the USA crew period was kind of like an inner-city phenomenon, and then we changed. But yeah, so anyway, we had... I think either late 85 or 86, I was asking Reem about this when the magic artists started, which is pretty common back then to have magic or something like these crazy, these kind of early hip hop exposure here, kind of.
Yeah, you need something that was like whimsical and magical and kind of from another world sort of thing.
Yeah, just these wacky names. I don't know. Yeah, and Tame and I were just trying to come up with a name for me, and we were just sort of saying rhyming words like blue, flew, rue, new, to. Oh, let's do that. Yeah, and that's how the name comes. So I got a 2 on the end. Like I talk to people in the States and that. Oh, like so who's new one then from your area or whatever? And they're like, oh no, just rhymed.
I was wondering that myself. I'm like, I wonder if somebody gave you that name and passed it down, or whether you just came up with it. But because in graffiti, there's a whole lot of one and oneers, but you, in a world of one and oneers, you wanted to be a 2.
Yeah, it just rhymed. I don't know if it's 50-50. Tame and I's just, yeah, I don't know. I have discovered 1 or 2 other news around the world, and a couple that will all basically start up after me, except for one in Brooklyn, which I thought there'd be a lot more of. There's been quite a few new with an S on the end news over history. Yeah. There's quite a prominent, a really good old school one in Sweden.
Yep. But I think when when Hayes came in, he said that you had to have 4 letters. Anything that didn't have 4 letters was considered to be whack back then. So maybe when you had the new, they're like, oh, you need another character at the end there to put the 2.
Yeah. As the Qs would say, like 3 letters, that's not a tag. Just messing around with me all the time.
Yeah. So once you develop the new 2, then you're like, okay, I'm going to go and try and make this a thing. You've got rid of your juvenile word, and you're onto your sort of more mature word.
Yeah, we just started doing a lot of insides with Poscas and pilots. Just started hanging out. Like back then, pre-Messenger, WhatsApp, all these kind of things. What I really love about then, as far as organising something, was like, oh, cool, man, I'll see you next Saturday at the tag board in the city square at 9 a.m. 9 a.m, cool. A week later, boom, the person's there, or they're not. But it wasn't like now where you could rearrange your meeting over 20, 30 messages going back to it.
Yeah, I'm running late, that sort of stuff.
And just like, can we do this? Can we do it? Just how it would all... so hard to organise something now compared to what it was pre-technology.
If you weren't there, you missed out. So you made sure you were there.
Yeah.
So tell us, for someone who's a bit younger, tell us about the tag board in the city. I don't know about that.
It's the end of the city square. It was a meeting place. I don't know. It's just a tag board, like a
billboard.
Yeah, it was just set up there for graffiti, for other, like there was earlier sort of bogan writing on there beforehand, and then writers would just smash it. Even got pieced a bit. There was a cool disguise piece on there.
Yep.
And then that was totally filled, so then people start tagging around it on the masonry or whatever it is anyway. So
yeah. So it was a city-sanctioned place for graffiti. They're trying to keep the problem focused in this one spot, but then it just became a meeting spot for people.
I have the feeling it was even their pre-writing problem, like pre-writing. But I'm not certain, because that was one meeting place, but there was also the marble, or a couple of different versions of the marble around the city, which we would go up to a place that was marble for the B-boys, but the B-boys used it. But I only went there on the tail end of that. I didn't have, I was still that kind of, I was still learning about Melbourne.
So then the USA crew was the one that everyone was looking up to, and then you guys kind of did your own thing after that kind of petered out. Is that how it went down?
USA crew was still going, and they were the ones we admired, of course, like Prime, Disguise, etc. And we'd started writing, but we were just doing these just little insides and also hitting the yards up our area and stuff. Up our areas.
And you'd come up with the DMA moniker by this stage?
Oh yeah, it was already we had our sort of citywide connected sort of crew, so we had a little bit of everything coming in, and we were just bombing and and piecing a little bit, and I remember this guy goes, oh, is that you? Okay, I've seen that. That's up, you know. And I'm like, I've been noticed by, you know. I really loved it, you know. And they sort of said, do you want to come hang? We're just doing this, and sort of got to meet these guys, you know. And the heroes are like the same age, or 6 months older, or a year older, or what have you, you know.
Yep.
Which is probably a bit for a teenager, I guess.
Yep.
I remember having a chat with Prime, and he goes, "Yeah, but we're 6 months apart, man. What are you talking about?" You know, I'm like, okay.
Well, I guess it's all comparative to how old you are and how many years of your life you've lived. So if you haven't lived that many years, 6 months is a huge section.
I think it's like that for teens, yeah. Yeah, but, so a lot of different people from all around the city were meeting up. There was also a crew called TMM with Wisp, Pudge.
Again with
Pudge's
the magic.
brother.
I think they were the
Yeah,
magic,
yeah. Oh, maybe they had a part to play in it. Who knows?
Yeah.
The magic, I don't know.
They were the magic men, were they? The magic
Makers? Was it?
magic makers, that's it, yeah.
Magic makers. Something. Yeah, so you would meet up with all these people, and people would be getting on trains at Flinders, and then there were city circle trains back then that just did city loops, and some other quieter ones like the Sandys, going Sandy to Richmond, Port Melbourne trains, St Kilda trains. I don't know if you remember St Kilda trains growing up.
Yes, I do. They were the red ones.
Yeah, well, I remember we'd get like Hitachis and things because you get the nice trains on the Saturdays, all the snappy new ones, you know, the Hitachis, and then I guess, I don't know if Coming's ever run down, I'm not sure. Someone with a better sense of history would know. So, yeah, so you could do these little, you're meeting up with all sorts of riders from all over the city and just hitting the city loops or what have you, you know. So sometimes you'd be on board. Some of the bigger guys, I remember USA guys and one time when they had some Sydney people with them, Marama, et cetera, were guarding the doorways so no other passengers, so the public, we kind of thought of them, the public and us like we were, I guess like how military would think about it. You know, like there's the civvies.
Yep.
And there's, so...
the normies and the riders.
Yeah, so, you know, you could protect all the doors so that when it pulls out, we've got empty cars and get a, you know, like right in the centre of the city like that. And you could do a lot of them on a morning. I was keeping record back then I had like a school diary and I had a little code system in there. And each day I would write down how many different cars I got, you know, so school days you'd get your 6 or to 12, you know, so round about there. And on Saturday morning, you get 17 to 21 trains. So you start to add that up in your school diaries by the end of the year, and you've got thousands. You've got the whole system. I think there was 300 and something cars in the system back then.
So you're doing each of them 3 times?
3 or 4 times over, easy, yeah. And, you know, obviously they're getting buffed very quickly. Yeah. Compared to other places where stuff ran, like, sure, you get small runs on things, and same with tags, but the majority of our riding didn't remain. And, like, it's a bit disheartening to see some of the New Yorkers are sort of like, they started buffing the train, so we stopped. It's like, what? I've never witnessed a time that that wasn't the case, and we're trying to overwhelm the system. Like I think Prod was mentioning to you about, you know, trying to bomb as many things so something else could run, or not trashing a particular train with panels on it in order for it to maybe run if they're not over the windows. These kind of things, you know, like. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole different game, and I think that here, it's always been as soon as they can, they clean the things. You know, like they're not letting things run unless they have no other option.
Yeah. When I first moved to Europe and I went down the train station, I was seeing panels that were 2 years old, 3 years old, stuff like that pull in. You know, and really bomb trains, just full of panels, and yeah, you could see the dates on them and stuff, and like, what?
It's hard to comprehend, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was pretty exciting at first. Now I don't even either bother looking at panels, or like at first I wanted to take photos of nice ones. Just I don't bother. Like
the novelty wore off.
I've got a elevated track sort of near my house where I pull up at a T intersection to watch trains, and half the time I just forget to even look at panels now. You know, But then I've taken people up the station as well. Like, man, this is going to be crazy. Check this out, and none pull in. So I don't know.
That's always the way, man. It's always the way. So, on your journey of doing insides, you're still going to school. Obviously, you're doing this at a young age. What are you, like 15, sort of 14?
Yeah.
14,
yeah. 15.
And then are you starting to do more actual trackside pieces and panels at that age as well?
Tried from the start. Yeah, we're definitely doing tracksides and doing as many panels as we could. We haven't done like thousands and thousands like other countries.
Yeah.
Like in Germany, unless you've done like 5,000, you're not a train king.
What?
It's ridiculous.
Really?
It's crazy.
So what yards were you frequenting sort of when you were in your teens doing those sort of panels?
All over. There was a lot of Belgrave. I was always a bit. There was Upper Gully. I think Tame did a fair bit in there. I was a bit freaked out by Upper Gully sometimes. Felt like I don't know why. It's just a bit of a trap sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But we were able to keep all the security cards and do a lot of. We were scoping all our yards, watching. We were over Western Suburbs. We were doing them as well, because our crew was all out there, all over the shop really. But trains were the holy grail.
Yeah.
Just being able to. I don't know how to convey the importance of that piece of metal wanting to have the time to paint there and that. Mm-hmm. We were talking to transits in this. It was a bunch of riders and a bunch of transits just probably gathering intel more than anything. And they were like, oh, so it's cat and mouse. It's really cat and mouse for you guys, isn't it, against us, And I was like, no way, you don't get it. It's just like, I just want to really, I just want to paint that thing. I don't want you in the road or creeping, the Graph Squad creeping in the bush or something at Belgrave and going to pop out from behind a gum tree and raid us or something, I just want to paint that thing. It's got nothing to do with the chase between you guys.
Yeah.
That's part of why I don't actually like the word graffiti, It's kind of, it sort of denotes a bit of the culture's view on our writing, like the illegal thing, this and that. It's not about our action and the place from where I would come from to want to paint what I paint. It's kind of, I understand people using it, but maybe like a term like how punk became punk, it became like that prison sort of term for
an undesirable sort of person.
Oh, a punk in American prison system was
like a mark, like someone who could take advantage of.
Yeah, you'd be taken advantage of without going into too much detail. So maybe people using graffiti in a sense like that, like it's become this. But I don't know. For me, writing's writing and had nothing to do with them.
So you'd prefer people to use the word writing than to use the word graffiti, but it's each to their own. It's the eye in their beholder.
People can say what they want.
But you don't like that term.
But for me, the place where I'm coming from is writing.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's not against them. It's not so much anti-established. It is in a sense. From maybe coming from being dissatisfied with the adults in my life as a youngster, and then you enter this kind of meritocracy where it's, okay, people are valued now on our own terms amongst our peers. If teens are trying to separate and make their own sense of rules rather than having adults to learn and follow, which would probably be our thing long term. But we've entered into this thing that's unto ourselves, and the rest of the world has no say in it. I sort of don't really care about art too much or any justification of it, what have you. For me, there was this kind of thing, okay, we've got our track sides, we've got our trains, and a lot of these spaces, they're kind of like weird in-between spaces for me, like track sides, compared to modern street bombing and what have you. These were like places like, when you're growing up as a kid, you're playing under a bridge, making BMX jumps or piecing or whatever you're doing. These are places no one cares about. Mm. And it wasn't till recently, there's a wall where I live next to a freeway that's underneath under a rail bridge, and you're allowed to paint there. The place is grotty, it's noisy. It's all that kind of stuff. Instead of doing an organised wall or big commission job or one of these kind of things, it just felt like, this is a real place. This takes me back to where the excitement of painting when you're a kid and you're painting some drains or this or that. It just felt like this is a space that no one cares about and I can just paint in it. And so it's kind of, for me, those kind of space, I can still disregard the world. I don't have to care about opinions. Where I live, in Europe, people are a lot more art exposed, what have you, of course, and people come up and, it's beautiful. It's, it's always really positive stuff, but it's like, I don't know, I get a bit grumpy when I paint or something. I want keep my headphones on, pretend I listen to music. I don't want people to come and say nice things or something. It's just like, just trying to quickly get done before I have to pick up my kid from school or whatever it is.
Yeah. But there is a total, like, even when you mentioned that the trains don't get buffed, people enjoy or accept more so artistic expression in a lot of different ways, not just graffiti. So it is a total different place to sort of exist rather than Melbourne. We're pretty artistic in some capacities, but also you get out of the metropolitan area and people don't care too much,
Yeah, like back then we had some of the best writers around the world other than, say, New York. Melbourne's punk scene, amazing art, the street art scene, they were right up there in the world, and our punk scene here is second to none, it's like a turnstile of Melbourne bands in Europe coming through all summer, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. Not just Melbourne with the punk scene, but Melbourne's punk scene, Australia's punk scene is strong in general.
Yeah. I'm just Melbourne centric. I'm just biased, man.
so am I a little bit as well. So let's talk about, when in those days when you were going on those missions, you guys are teenagers. No one's got a car or anything, so you're literally just racking your paint, filling up your bag, going to the end of the line, wandering around until the time's right, painting your pieces, waiting for the next train.
Yeah.
To come the next day. Is that right?
More or less, yeah. We were pretty systematic. I think for me, the era of DMA, AC, we'd become a bit more systematic. I don't know if inner city people had the opportunities, and I'm sure they knew what they were doing with yards, like, because there was Zone from USA Crew was out Upper Gully. They knew what they were doing, but I think we were able to, because we had people all over the city, we were able to start to really systemize the way we operated, I think for me it was a lot more meticulous like that. Like, I remember, just for example, I think Tame and I bumped into Worm on a train one time. Worm was Monster Bomber. And I said, so we got this yard, and did this trackside, and this is Sunday morning when we seen him. He'd give one of his giggles, and then he's just like, I just did 7 yards last night, and I did this and this and this. And so we were kind of, he was extreme, but we were managing to kind of strategically get the city as well, like across the board. But then that's not always represented. Like I was saying, with the merit, there is no justice in a teenage sort of meritocracy necessarily. Like you would think you come out, you can be treated for the effort you put in, but then if you're on Dandy Frankston's and the Broady connection there, you're not necessarily going to see what these guys have done. Same with the Eppinghurst bridges. The overlap is going to be slow, so there isn't, yeah.
So when you are doing these missions, is acquiring paint then easy or easy? Well, obviously it's not easy now, but was it easier then? Was it something that you didn't even really question? You could just get your paint. It wasn't the hardest part of the mission.
I think it's a lot of work getting around and then getting around with it, and not being pulled up when you're a known person for the Graph Squad. But yeah, I had shops, Dandy and that, pretty early as well, and go out to industrial areas, and I had places that weren't as used up yet, and good ink places down there, and had a good free reign of the trains there before people started coming down the packing.
Right.
And so people started going packing them. Like, I know they've got my glorious spots now, and then eventually trains started coming down and having to sneak off from them, things like that.
If you're on a train and the transits would come on, would they could pick a rider? They would single them out.
Plus, they knew us on first name basis as well.
Right. So they'd just come up to you. How you going?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. Like later on, we had our pieces would get crossed out with our first names over top. You know, with some.
That's confronting. That's like a decent strategy on their behalf.
Yeah, they'd write over top of your piece like Joe blogs as gay and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, and they also had their own tags at that stage, but yeah, they all knew us sort of first name basis, you know.
So you can understand where they want to think about this cat and mouse sort of game because they think it's you against them, but in your mind it's you against the system or wanting to paint this stuff, and they're just a distraction.
Yeah, and a scary one back then because they were plain clothes and they were stashed out. It's not like as systematic as what you would. It's not like you would. The graph squad was separate and they could roam yard to yard. They could drive yard to yard and you just didn't know, you know, like that was a scary thing about them. They could pop out of nowhere. They used to sit up. Later on when I had my own, like I had a government, after I lived in a refuge and these different things, because I lived out of home from pretty early age. On and off. I had a rental, a government-assisted rental, and they used to just sit there in the car and just watch from up the street. So, because a lot of riders were in the downstairs one, which was my place, but I'm secretly moved upstairs with Nabbit, and then we would have to sneak out the back of our block of flats to go piecing. You know, like you've got the transits at your front doorstep, and we've got our bags and heading out the back car park and then quickly running across the road and they haven't seen us, all right, we're good, and then we're off.
They'd literally wait out the front of your house for you to try and catch you, just leaving the house with paint.
Yeah. I've had uniforms before describe my bedroom to me, but before anybody had actually come in when we were physically there, so I don't know.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So when they're so red hot on you guys and you're doing so much work, eventually do they confront you or do they build a case or how does it work?
A bit. I always tried to stay. I never wanted to be the most up, the most. So I've seen what's happened to my friends with it, you know, like always after Tame, and some other friends. And I just always tried to stay quiet and just a little bit under the radar best I could because I didn't have parental backup.
Oh yeah.
And when I did, the only time they come to my house when I was living with a parent, they took me into a police station to interview, and my dad went out and sat with the senior sergeant because he knew him. Just do whatever you like to him in there, and that's the only time I've ever had parental protection. It wasn't even that because my dad's side of the family, my mum's side, had some crooked brothers, what have you, but my grandfather was a Collingwood cop.
Oh wow!
You know, like way back in the day, you know, when it was a pretty wild place. So Dad had connections like that, you know, like with the police, but also with bikers and this and that, and it's like, yeah.
So you felt that because you were out of home and you were somewhat, you know, living independently, that if you did kind of get busted big time, you didn't have the parents to bail you out, that you were on your own with whatever legal support you could get from the government. Is that how you know it works?
Yeah, so it makes you pretty cautious. Mm-hmm. Plus, you're racking full time to live. You know, like I had a living away from home allowance, but they just basically paid your rent once it's in proper flats, as you say in Australia. I was going to say apartment, but a flat.
Yeah.
And then, so you got no backup when they come a knocking, which they did. You know, we had one time I just got a pistol straight in the mouth when it came in the front door. And we did a. Tame was in front of me, and he unlocked the door. We had all our groceries. You know, you take say $5 out. You had $5 on you, so you'd do a whole run of different supermarkets and come home with more than you could carry, kind of thing. And then the door opened. He was dragged in, and the dude puts a pistol in my face. I'm off. I remember I was running down the stairs. I got a fair way down. I'm thinking, where am I running? Where am I running? I'm running away from... And I just sort of stopped him and what am I doing? Because I can't, I couldn't go home. He said he grabbed me. He's like, you turned white when I pulled my fist up to hit you. I was like, yeah, man.
But that's just how it was, and that's what you had to do to get by, I guess, if you didn't have, anywhere to rely upon.
Yeah, I mean, I was adamant I was going to finish high school because my dad said you never would, and I was always an A student, like a straight A student. And then I got involved with writing.
So you didn't finish school?
I did. I was about 2 weeks off, but finishing. But back then, HSC or whatever it was called, was my English. I was like 79% attendance instead of 80, so you automatically fail year 12. So I gave up just about a week before the end of high school, I think, because there was no point anymore.
I'm a bit younger, but I remember people that would attend school they were living out of home at that age, teenage, that you could get like a bit of a dispensation or whatever, but that obviously didn't exist when you were there. I was going to Swinburne, and I'm sure there was other people in more full-on predicaments than me. Yeah.
For every tale, there's 10 times crazier ones that I've heard or seen with writing,
Man, well, tell us about Swinney, because that is a school that a lot of writers went to. It seems to be almost the mecca of graffiti in the 80s and 90s from a high school perspective.
Yeah, I always wanted to go there because of USA people and what have you. And then I finally got to go there, and I was in art class with like Paris and Tame, and there were some Western Suburbs guys, Merck and Amuse or Amuse. I think, and they would travel all the way from wherever else, or way out there somewhere to come to school. Yeah. So it was just full of writers in the hall and stuff. It was nice. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was getting to live the dream by then.
Yeah, and you were at that school, but you were living out of home by yourself, but going to that school. There's a fair few distractions.
I was living with Tame and Prince, so we were painting flat out together. And then also doing this survival stuff, I was racking, like jeans and what have you for business, I was a pretty reasonable racker. Mm-hmm. Not too insane, but so that I was just living there was just writing. I couldn't imagine anything else in my life, Yeah. It's just everything was about writing.
At that point in time, did anybody think that, okay, we could turn this art into a career, or that was not on anyone's radar?
For me, I would probably even, although I'd done a couple of tiny little jobs, I probably would have objected to it. I remember Tame and I did something on Greville Street, and we painted in the interior, and we weren't really feeling what we'd done, and we let that on to the guy. He goes, all right, well, I'll pay you half for that because it's obviously not good then, right? And, and us kids are like, oh, whatever, you're only going to give us that now, okay. Maybe it wasn't half, but... I was just turned off, like... Same with the VA stuff later on. As soon as you had people from the outside... Joe was great and everything at the VAYC, but I only did one wall with their paint, and whoever came out to the wall with us, can you maybe do this like this, or can you get this done by then, or do that? And I'm like, this has got, what's this outsiders doing, for a headstrong kid, I was just like, nah, and I didn't even do the wall, I think.
Yeah.
Because I just...
took the soul out.
Just having outside, it just felt like it was, it sounds like mafia, it was our thing. So, it wasn't about anyone else, so, nah.
Had music come into your life by this stage? Had you started playing music?
Not quite.
Right. It was just graph.
I picked up bass. I was only listening to hip hop until maybe hearing some Fugazi or something, or maybe Maloney, something like that. And it was just life changer. Just, like I started getting into music once. I think hip hop wasn't speaking to me. Like the content, it was sort of post or during the end of the. Was it Native Tongues? Is that all the?
Yeah, they're like the kind of conscious rap.
Yeah, I was, and I love. I still love KRS. I still try to listen if something comes out, what have you. But I got no idea what's happening in hip hop. It's just sort of all of a sudden these other people speaking about similar concerns, and it wasn't, and they were people oppressed in a different sense, like that I could relate to as well, like how I could with hip hop, and then coming from either poor people or oppressed people in America, what have you, I could identify with all this, and then next minute they're talking about, I don't know, just killing people and getting tons of money for drugs and so whatever. It kind of, I went off as like, I didn't even hear that Great Nas album because I'd sort of gone off course with that. And back then you couldn't really be, maybe you could, but people were very, writing has a tendency to go down to its base level a lot with dudes and, what, you don't do that's therefore it's this sort of weird sets of rules,
Yep.
You still see people that are over 50 to this day still spouting these self-imposed rules that they heard from some 16-year-old kid from New York when they were 16 and haven't grown with it, like
Everything changes.
Yeah.
So what rules, if you had to name a couple of rules that graffiti does have, what would you say that they are, if any?
Rules, geez. I don't know. I do like the respect of order of things and not going over, what have you. Mm-hmm. But then that's changed in circumstances for legal things, particularly in Europe, and then I'm lucky if a piece will last a day. Right. I don't know. I'm more. The rules don't concern me as much about what I'm interested in that respect would be how tradition continues and evolves. Mm-hmm. Like a healthy tradition continues to grow, and change slowly with a good backbone of what came before. And I think ever since things like the writer's bench, what have you, didn't happen, it's easier to be like a culture where, I don't know, say like you got Dogtown skaters and then you can just go into a shop and buy all the stuff, buy the T-shirt, do it for a year or two and get bored. There's a superficial version versus something that's deep and profound, got its own set of things going on. And so there's unspoken rules, but as far as writing rules, I don't know. I kind of want to be flexible and open with these things. Like you see all these changes and you got to kind of, okay.
Yeah. The internet changed a lot of what people perceive to be rules and things you can and can't do, And I'm guessing before that time, people were like, no, this guy doesn't get it. And they'd just tell you you're fucking up the rules. Now the internet, people go, I can make my own rules,
Yeah, I also, now that you mention about rules, if someone people, but it's graffiti, it's not supposed to have rules, man. You can do what I want, I'm free. And it's kind of like, dude, you kind of, if you're doing something educated and you understood writing and it was in that context, fine. But, like if you're just going over something from somebody that's, I don't know, say they're dead or that's their last piece since 1980, it's been sitting there since 1987, and then you just go do some, I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
There's definitely exceptions where I would be like, I would have liked there to be a rule there.
But that is the whole thing. Like people are like, well, don't tell me what to do. You're already breaking the rules and blah blah blah. And yeah, I can go on forever.
Yeah, but then what rules are you breaking? You're breaking a societal rule if that would be argument as opposed to breaking a sense of respect amongst peers.
See, the thing is now with the internet, kids that want to learn how to write or do any discipline for that matter can research it, and there's no excuse to be going and chucking a toy tag over the top of someone who's been respected and done a piece that's been there for a while. You know what I mean? There's no excuse anymore because you can do the research. Back in the 80s, you just did what you did if no one had schooled you on the proper ethics of how you should conduct yourself.
It wouldn't happen back then, and there was usually a price to pay, you know.
So they're different time. Yeah.
Now, if you go, there's so many subgenres. I don't know if it's like that over here as much, but over there in Europe, you've got train riders, you've got like street people, and then you've got your Hall of Famers, you know. And there's people that have just grown up just painting Hall of Fames, just doing legal work. And someone will just come and cross that over, and these people aren't necessarily street smart as old school people. Some are, some aren't. But they're there just to create their art or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so there's no, it's not like you're going to catch up with them at the bench and sort stuff out, you know, like there would be a price to pay historically. Yeah. Or just shunned from the whole thing because people are like, what's his cat doing, you know?
Mm. Do you, the whole anti-style movement, which has taken over in, say, the last 10 or so years, has been happening, and it originated, from my knowledge, kind of in that Europe sort of scene. What do you think about that kind of movement?
Well, I'd say first there was a crew called Toys Crew in I'm just trying to think which, I'll just say Liège. It's in Liège. They kind of started with a bit of that kind of thing. And a lot of Australians actually spread it that were over there doing trains at the time, came back with that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So for me to hear it, back then it was like Euro style, and I'm like, but then if you go to Europe and it's so diverse and it's not really a Euro style, like some of the best stylists I know are from Europe, you know. It's this whole Euro style thing is just ridiculous. I understand if you go out, when I was going out painting at -10 or something, why you need to do a fat cap kind of style because thin caps and things just aren't going to work in that kind of condition. You know, you've got to have your whole bag of paint on the heater before you leave and everything warmed up, you know, if you're painting in those sort of conditions overnight. So I could see how things become a fat cap sort of style.
Stripped back.
Out of necessity. But it's such a generalisation because there'd be dudes doing intricate wild style stuff that are amazing, you know. Mm-hmm. And nation to nations, there's different style, you know, like even back to anti-style. But anti-style for me is very like what punk would be to imagine you got a band like I don't know, Genesis or something, and the whole world's become this prog rock fancy doodling, and you're a little kid or something, or you're a new writer, and it was even exhausting for me. I have to take 40 cans to a wall just to do a piece or something, you know. Yeah. And just to be the antithesis and the punk version after putting up with all this prog noodling, it might have been exciting and refreshing. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe for them. But on the other hand, I want to see a kind of a flow and a bit of a discussion and dialogue amongst pieces, not necessarily artists, but I used to be right into this dialogue idea of painting, you know, like the pieces are a discussion from one piece to the next to the next. And you would see stuff in that period emerge that it's reactionary to itself, to the writing system itself. And I'm like, why waste your time in being reactionary to anything? You know, it's sort of, although there is that stuff underlying in writing, it's kind of like just doing your own thing. Don't be trying to annoy, because, you know, people would actually love annoying people with older styles, you know. That's why I think it's a bit like punk in a sense. It was kind of...
It shook things up. It came in and changed it.
Yeah, but the same time, I'd see the stuff and just like, that connection, that doesn't make sense. And you've just cherry-picked this and cherry-picked that. I see that with a lot of stuff now. It's like you don't even know it's like you've been like, we spent our whole time in the 80s and stuff trying to be new and brand new, you know, like what can we do that's evolved in the next step, the next step, the next step. And so when we're seeing older things, you know, I could even be dismissive of 70s New York things. Silly of me. But if you don't know, if you haven't got an understanding of what those things are and who actually made that connection and why this is on a letter and this and that, they just look like these weird cherry-picked blobs that don't make sense, that don't understand elements of writing. And I realise it's sort of maybe trying to be like that to an extent, but you can also do these retro vintage things and that, and do it tastefully with knowledge. Like you see stuff like, say, Demote. He's an older writer, and he paints in these kind of classic sort of styles, but he understands everything that's going on there, and he's got a deep knowledge. He probably even knows the guy who first did an arrow like that off a, you know, and he can probably tell you the history of why that's there on a letter, or
like they'd say at school, show us your workings out. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
and that stuff is awesome, and it's awesome because of this kind of element as well. There's, you know, you can see there's a reverence and an understanding of all the different archetypes or tropes that we use, you know, and those kind of things are. Those kinds of things are our language, and if you're not eloquent with the language, not saying that everyone has to be eloquent with the language, but it doesn't hurt, right? Mm-hmm. People don't want experts these days. They hate experts because they want to be reactionary. It's the outside, it's the man, or whatever it is. But so maybe that painting is kind of a bit of it does represent the times in a respect like that. But I think a good understanding of all and how to use the language of writing with, you know, whether it be bars or how do you use a serif or certain little spurs off letters. I'm talking about Western fonts now.
Like serifs and kicks.
Yeah, just understanding how all these things are and what their history are, where they come from, you know, these traditional aspects allows you to be free and move forward eventually, you know. Like, then you do it enough, you're starting to make stuff from your body and your sensibility, how your body moves, what have you, and then...
Yeah. Because in the early days, everyone was trying to be unique. No one wanted to bite. Everyone wanted to have their distinct style, but sometimes it takes some writers like 10, 15 years to sort of find their style. They start to just do, maybe not then because you didn't have the time, but now I look back at some people I know's early works and where it's evolved to now, and it's taken them a long time to find their distinct style.
Yeah, I don't think people should stay in their one thing like that and be on repeat if you're not growing every piece. And then I don't know what the personal meaning or what have you is in what you're doing. Maybe, sure, it can just be a fun piece. You can't always be bringing out the great new development, internal, you know, like your own growth all the time. But I want to see something new in a piece that excites the painter. Like, you know, you're trying something new, and over a series of 10 pieces, you've developed that into something, and before you know it's going to be your... something that feels like you've done it, rather than just put a top 40 piece together, you know, like, okay, there's this, I'll cherry pick this, I'll do this.
That colour scheme, this 3D, yeah.
You see pieces like that, and it's like people just, is it for likes or this or that, or are they actually personally getting some growth and development out, like something worth doing, you know, something fucking meaningful for your own life? Yeah. Or are you just, I just want to be famous, I want people to like, or whatever nonsense. I don't know what they're thinking.
So you're talking about people that you think are on the internet just putting together these pieces for the sake of building a following and potential commercial gain from it, that you can see through it?
I'm saying to a degree, I just see people. It's fun to take things from your period and do that, right? Fine, but I'm just looking for
Authenticity.
Yeah, authenticity. Yeah.
Do you think you'd be a different writer if you were growing up in this day and age with the internet and everything?
I think so, because you just haven't got the exposure of peers. You haven't got the exposure to peers and highly judgmental teenagers all around you, at the bench or what have you. So you don't have to be on your thing, on your game on that respect. You can get a lot. You can get away with a lot from behind a screen, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. But Melbourne was had an overemphasis, a great emphasis on originality. Uh-huh. Like I've heard of other places in other nations where they just go through subway art and learn the whole book and learn all those styles. But then you got to free yourself of that, Yeah. Rather than
it's easier to develop your own thing than unlearn something else.
Yeah, and we also had the benefit of this kind of regionalism, and somebody has taken a sort of one movement of a letter, like instead of a straight stem, a bent stem, like they're really like that, and that's then turned into a local style. There's a period of Melbourne that I sort of think of as bent stem. I don't know what else to call it, but it's distinctly regional, and it's
when everything was moving forward.
Yeah, the bottom half of the stem kicking backwards, next bit forward, and then people would get trapped in their outline, and there's just like they can't get out of that. Yeah, so we've had all our little periods like that, but there was a real we were talking about the notion of originality or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I was just asking whether you think you'd be a different sort of artist or writer if you grew up now with the internet and this sort of time, the period we are in graffiti. If you think your style would develop differently.
Yeah, I can't say, can you?
It's hard to
Who knows?
Or even if graffiti would have grabbed you because it's such a different thing now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of when you're asking the question. Would it be like just going into the store and buying a little bit of subculture for a little while and then moving on to something else? Would it stick? Yeah.
That is, and that is, I guess everyone's different in where they are at their point in their life, and I guess maybe something that is a little bit more less polished now than sort of graffiti can be seen as, maybe that would grab you more, if you're growing up in this period of time. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. I was painting a wall recently, and this little kid came up to me, and he's just like, a piece, whatever. Oh, can I grab one of your cans and have a tag? And then this is in Europe, and he goes, do you know a writer called Pork? Because he heard I was from over here. And I'm like, no, I don't know him. And talking about Mio as well from here, and saying the best writers in the world, they're my favourite. So, of course you're going to have an aesthetic from your period that you enjoy.
Yeah.
It's just natural, isn't it?
Yeah, it happens all the time when people talk about music. They're like, this guy's the best and this band's the best. And it's like, well, it's all relative to when you grew up. You know what I mean? People don't tend to dig back further than sort of like 20 years of when that... Well, some people do, but most people just, you that timeline is from your timeline that you're born and that you kind of lived through,
Yeah.
People don't dig back that much further generally.
Yeah, and you just got to get older and more wily and start digging back, I listen to and enjoy a lot of... rock and roll from the 50s and stuff, and just try to see what the backbone of all these things are and try to understand where that's come from and the country that came from that and the Western music as two distinct different things, and keep going back through all these things to find these sources, and it's fascinating. I've been doing it. That's where you get a bit more meaning to what a band now is doing. It's the same with. If you look at 70s and 80s New York writing, and then you can see what the kids were looking at, and it's the comics they were looking at or the record covers or what have you, or the graphic artists that they were looking at that I'm interested in. That's the stuff I'm digging up. I'm looking at old record covers. I even on one piece I did a homage to a 60s record cover that I'm going, because it's full of bubbles and these kind of things. I'm like, okay, so you can start to see a bit of source material, you know, or the kind of comics these kids would look at. I'm not so interested in the comics, but I started looking back on old psychedelic artwork. For a long time I've been a big fan of that Victor Moscoso from San Francisco, I hope I said that right, and Peter Max, all these kinds of things, and people like that learning to break colour rules outside of they've left art colleges said no, you can't put this pink and green together or this or that together, and they just did it and made psychedelic art out of it.
Yeah. They're like, don't use all these typefaces, and they're like, we'll use as many as we want, you know, we'll make our own typefaces.
Yeah, and they've just totally flipped it on them and created these new sort of forms. So I'm more interested in all these kind of source material and how that affects writers, and I think it's pretty healthy to know. Like when I moved to Europe, I felt like a bit freer to do what I want. I started looking back into sort of retro sci-fi and all these things. I was thinking, what did I like as a kid, you know? Like, okay, I was a Star Wars kid, and later on psychedelics, these kind of things, and try to, like, I don't really look at much writing, but I look at all these things and like, how can you use these things and add them to us, you know, like you'd see panel work on a retro spaceship and realize, you know, like, okay, those lines are really interesting now. How can I merge that into my lettering and then drop it?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you're getting your inspiration and source material from non-graffiti related stuff when people that go and just look on Instagram and cherry pick, as you were saying, bits from other people, then that's not true to themselves. That's just putting together a compilation CD of internet pics where yours is coming from the source material, where it's coming from, and you're gonna make something that's entirely yours.
Well, from somewhere, I don't know me particularly, but you know, I don't really consider I have a style, and I don't really feel like I have a set. I don't want to even have a set style or my style, or
Okay.
like I don't know what that is. I'm not over concerned with that identity. Like the West has this real identity issue going on for a bit now, right? And
sorry, I don't want to cut you off.
No, you're right.
I think that comes from everybody wanting to create a brand, for lack of a better terms, and that's what a writer sort of does. They get their style, which becomes their brand, and then they evolve that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's where that fascination comes from. The people are trying to create that brand.
Yeah, I'll try to work against my own sense. You know, like if I get too comfortable in a way I'm doing a certain line with my body or this or that, I'll question it. You know. Yeah. So I'm more like I'm not really. I don't think about that stuff particularly. I'm more like, okay, so I'm always got these arrows in. What if I just do arrowless pieces and see if the piece can stand up? Like I'm not thinking about the final product, or okay, I'm not going to use bubbles because it's a trope that's been used without. It's a cliche I'm doing without considering what I'm doing. So then I'll cut that out for a while, and really examine. So what's left? Is there enough left to stand up? Even if I could know, like I really get involved with that process, and then I get to the end of the piece, like, oh, man, what were you thinking? Like, look at that thing. That's horrible, you know.
But you put so many restraints on yourself.
Oh. Well, they're explorations.
Okay, yeah.
So I want to, the pieces, if I'm investigating and I'm like, oh, that's awesome, I'm really happy with that investigation process, but then I don't rein it in and just like, I know if I had arrows on there, then it would have looked much cooler, or, you know, it could have been more pleasing to the outside, but I don't, I'm trying to think about that so the end product's there.
Yep.
Like sometimes that's a good thing about painting with the cues. He would pull me up and like, hey, is that right there? Do you think you could, you know? And then we'd feedback it on each other as we're painting and make better end results. But I wish I would be a bit more results focused sometimes.
But that's
as well. Like, so it's, yeah.
It's that, but that is very interesting though, because a lot of people and now with the technology there is with paint and nibs and all sorts of, and people with all the time that they've got, you can embellish anything. The letter form may not be there. You can, like you said, add a lot of arrows and fluff to it. But what's core there is the letters. And if you strip it back, does that have style? And I guess that's what a lot of people that really look into graffiti really look at. Does it have style if you took away all the bells and whistles?
Yeah, technique is something to drop, I think. You learn technique. There's a saying from a potter, spent the first half of his life climbing up the hill, and the second just casually strolling down it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like that with things like technique. You get to a point where you can drop it, or like I tried to do very precise painting until the point that I could get a precise painting looking fluent and relaxed. Things like that, and then and you don't think about sort of technique or tricks like that anymore, but the substance has got to be there. Sometimes you see pieces that are way too wild for what the base letter really is, and it seems like they're just hiding the lack of a inventive, fundamentally wild letter, rather than something that's just got a million things going on in it, and then you strip it back and it's like it's just a bubble letter sort of thing. Yeah. Or a softie, as they used to say. In New York.
and that does happen a lot, and now it's so easy to get inspiration from the internet. But when you were young and when you were doing that sort of stuff, you had to archive your own images. You had to take your own photos, and you had to develop them and all that sort of stuff. Were you good at documenting your work when you were the most active?
I think at the time I was getting everything, but transits took everything from our houses quite a few times over. Mm-hmm. I was lucky. Tame's dad had a lost bag in one of his houses, and that was full of a fair bit of my stuff. Yeah, my old markers from the 80s, which is cool to have them now. For sure. But it's taken a bit of regaining things a little bit, and people have photos of pieces, and I'm like, I've totally forgot about the piece, or they've just got a great shot, and I haven't, or I've got a crinkled up version of it, something. Yeah, because I lost all my photos. I don't know. I got raided. My houses have been raided a lot over time. So.
And did they actually get you with any of the raids? They got you properly?
No.
Oh. Even with the photos, that's good.
Yeah, just take these things. Remember one time they stole a couple $100 off Tame.
Really?
Things like that. They just pocket their stuff, and there was a value. And
do you think they archive those photos, or do you reckon it sits in an evidence room for a while and then they bin them?
Well, interesting story. The transits, the Graph Squad from back then, I think, had some sort of trouble with the government or some sort of beef when they got defunded or something like this happened, and tons of stuff got warehoused. And all those photos, there was a guy that did movie props, and he bought a whole heap of stuff from their warehouses, just like old transit seats and signage. He even had the H keys for the trains, which I think federal police or something came to take off him or something. But he had boxes of the squad's materials as well. And then it was just sitting there, and I got wind of certain rolls of film. I won't go into that discussion because it's probably private to another couple of big name people that you know. But there were things found basically from people's youth that they were very lucky to have. They're very fortunate to have back for their personal lives. Yeah, wow. Stuff like that. So it's good. So that stuff, there was a bit of a break in information as far as I understand. Because they used to have all our cards. I've seen my own card when I've been in there. And they had like Rolodex sort of style cards with all the times you're being picked up. Yeah. Even written down fake tags that I'd given them during an interview thing where I told them this wacky story. And they had that stuff written down. Every time they were trying to connect, because like I was mentioning earlier, it was like we'd all be on trains together, get our names taken. It was a kind of random jumble. Quite often it would be with the same people in your crew, but it would just be random people you were taken with, and I could see the informants, each person that had dobbed me in on the back of the car, that kind of stuff.
You got access to that?
Yeah, so I know people.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've never. Anyway.
Well, that's a huge part of it. I guess you've got to figure out in that early part who you trust and who you can't trust. And I guess you're not to know in that early stage who you can trust.
Kids under pressure just, would just do stuff out of fear for themselves or for, But I couldn't imagine ever going over that line. It just, you wouldn't be part of the community anymore for me, It's, that kind of self-preservation, and which is usually unnecessary self-preservation at the cost of your friends. I can't imagine it. It's just, that was such a no-go zone.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not like they're all going to do big time for murder cases in America or some nonsense. It's just painting.
Yeah, and so some people, I guess, are probably more scared of the ramifications from their parents than the cops. You know what I mean? Like, fuck, my dad's gonna really lose it here. Or he's gonna, you know what I mean? Like that might be more the mentality than the actual police.
Yeah, but usually at that juncture, their parents are probably going to be involved in the interview process anyway, unless they're a little bit older.
Yeah,
I've been caught out in train yards where I'm just surrounded by them, bashing me and stuff, and I couldn't yell out to anyone anyway, Like, who are you going to get help from anyway? I can't, you tell a parent, they're probably going to go, oh, you probably deserve that, did you?
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing, I guess. A lot of people just don't understand why you would do it, why you're doing it, and then they would have, most normal people would be like, well, you shouldn't have been in the yards painting in the first place, like you said, man.
Yeah. I've told this story before. I think it was in Baylor's book.
Yep.
Yeah,
Just over there.
Of getting caught in Jollymont, doing a bit of a runner, and cops, like, actually it wasn't cops, transit's like, what was he? Stop or I'll shoot, with a fair bit of swearing involved. And then so I threw my can at him, and then he threw a baton back at me, missed. And then trying to corral me with some guys come around this way and that, and then using the car, and eventually found me. And I got pushed out of a train by I was hiding in a train, and I got pushed out by these uniforms. Because I said I was just sleeping here, I took off my dark tie, I had a light top on, and I did my Academy Award, sort of waking up like, what's going on, and pushed me out, and they come around, and I was handcuffed behind my back, and these blokes are like, yep, that's him. And then the one guy grabs me by my hair and starts smashing my face on the boot of the car. Where's your paint and all this and that? And then the other guy gets out of the car. Hey, stop. What are you doing? And then grabbed me by the back of the hair, goes, let me fucking do it. And starts smashing me. Starts smashing my head. I got pretty beat up that night, actually, because transit batons had come into use 4 days before. So the transits and the police used to travel together for these some kinds of things. So the police that were there were training the transits on baton use on me. So, like...
You're the guinea pig.
Yeah,
so, crash test on me.
Yeah, so I had to stay kneeling. If I crouched my stomach a bit, they'd smack me. And if I stayed kneeling, they'd smack me in the stomach and wind me. So I kept getting winded over and over. And if I accidentally swore, they'd hit me again, stuff like this. And meanwhile, the people at the back were trying the batons. It was a full circle because they did this big emu walk of the yard. It was either 12 or 16. I can't remember. I think maybe only 12 around me at the time. And then they'd put the baton in, and when you handcuff from behind, and twist up your arms. And then they were testing, oh, so does that hurt? Yeah, that's a pretty good one. and then they'd all have goes of these different things you could do with a baton, these different techniques that the cops were training them on. And I was just in the middle of Jollymont Yard, like, oh, all right. Couldn't do much.
They let you go eventually?
Well, yes. Oh, actually, they took me back to 301, the Flinders Lane 301, and both wrists were full on bleeding by then, And they were just sort of like, oh, so why'd you do that to yourself? That's crazy, And they thought I had a bag of paint, and I really didn't. I'd done a window down the night before, and I was just sort of doing a tourist walk with a couple of riders showing them my entry to the yard and like, let's have a look at this, and just having a fun walk, you know. And yeah, the senior sergeant punched me fair because I was pretty knackered by this stage. I was just staring at him, just sort of vacantly looking. What the fuck are you looking at? And then just smacked me straight in the face. So I kept going on, and then they made me walk home. They so quite the stroll home, and pretty sore the next day.
Jesus. Because
that stuff doesn't leave much bruising. Like that's the kind of techniques I was sort of working on. I think, I don't know. It was pretty corrupt back then. They're pretty crooked. It wasn't until what was her name, Dixon or something? The police, the head of police, the commissioner, Pauline Dixon. No,
Cynthia Nixon. No.
Once she came in, the police.
Was it Nixon? Was it Nixon?
Nixon could have been, yeah.
Nixon, yeah.
And the police cops changed a little bit at that juncture, and then it was a little bit different the next time. I got grabbed in a yard with the APU, Asset Protection Unit. Like, we didn't know it existed as yet. You know, you do checks. The full-time security go home at daybreak, and oh yeah, cool. We can finally get in. We're actually on our way home, just eating at a bakery, and then saw them go. So run all the way back and eating bakery food, putting up your first, and these plain clothes people jump out of the trains on us. Got away a fair way, but copped a beating then. But then the police culture then were okay. Once you got talking to the cops, they were like, yeah, they're just trumped up security dudes, and they shouldn't be doing that. And
so
they're actually really cool comparatively to how I remember them as a younger, as a youngster, you know.
Because then the yards weren't patrolled all the time, and there's no cameras either.
No.
So you look at these missions that people are doing now with all the technology, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. When I got caught then, I think there was cameras on that one, but we didn't expect the double security, the plainclothes that had been hiding out all night while the security were in there, or part of the night.
That's the cat and mouse thing then.
Yeah, like the old days in a freaky way, because when I was young, I'd be walking through, I'd be doing the walkthroughs, I'd be doing all the scoping, know all the yards really well. I'd know my inside outs and feel pretty comfortable in what I was doing. And then later on, when I started doing some stuff again, in the 2000s, I was very reliant on others and definitely didn't feel as comfortable. And there's cameras. It's just like, nah, just come in here, do this, and then you avoid this, and just following others rather than the other way around.
So, besides your artwork with Pottery and in the streets, did you get into any sort of fine art kind of gallery stuff?
Started doing a lot of collages based on real pieces, like or cut paper. There's, I can't really think of the word for it, but I started replicating my pieces in layered paper form, really, really detailed.
What gave you the idea to do that? It's interesting.
Can't remember. I don't know. Just wanted just to do them in a different way and do something other than drawing with markers and paint, I think.
Yeah. And that worked well for you? You enjoyed the process?
It was great. And at that point, there were some people doing straight black cutouts. Just single piece paper kind of thing, just cut through, that kind of stuff that look almost like stencil kind of things. And then I just wanted to build them up into a kind of 3D form a little bit as well, and show all the steps. And then, I started to show a little bit in the States. I was in a group show, then went back for a solo show, and was with another gallery over in Chicago. And got to go to Miami and do the Scope Art Fair.
Are they leveraging off your graffiti background, or are they just taking you at face value as just a fine artist type person?
These were galleries that dealt with street art and graffiti sort of people, I guess. Yeah.
Yep. And did you enjoy that process, or what? Like, because that's a vast shift from painting trains in Melbourne.
Yeah, the idea of a working artist was appealing to me just for you can make work at home, and they were highly detailed. I could do them at home. They were still about writing, and you get to travel. The gallery says, "Here's a ticket," and then I think I went to the States 6 times in 1 year or something. Which for me, I didn't get to go as a kid. I could never afford to go over and see what I wanted to see at the time. But then, so it's like if you're getting to travel and meet people and get around the world, why not? It was kind of fun. I thought, okay, I could probably do this as a job because I did the stereotypical that writing ruins your life kind of thing, like kind of wrecked the tail end of school. I didn't know what was even available out there. So to do that sort of stuff was fun. And why not? Because like there were plenty of people that had nothing to do with it, nothing much to do with it, out selling work, what have you. And I thought, well, if that could be an income, great.
Yeah.
But then I just I stopped pretty cold and just kept trying to renovate my house.
What brought it to a halt?
It was kind of my wife at the time saying, "Hey, can you just get back to working on the house and just finish the house, please?" It's kind of, you're spending all this time on these. Yeah.
Are their work still out there? Can we look at them?
I guess there's probably still a few online. I kept 1 or 2 for myself. There's one in Melbourne at the moment in the Sandrew exhibition.
Oh, yeah.
What is it, opening hours or something?
It's, yeah.
Something like that.
A few of those guys were bombing the walls last week for that opening.
Somewhere near Hosey Lane. I don't know.
It's called Off the Street or something. No, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, and people have sent me photos of my thing in there.
Yeah, because they purchased it as
couple of
part of
times.
their personal collection or something.
Yeah.
Right.
They put on the first show in San Francisco, that first or second show I was involved with over there. But yeah, so from that, the gallery said, "Do you want to come back and do your own show and stuff?" I'm like, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did it change your graffiti mindset once you went to the US and sort of saw different styles in the flesh and how people were painting over there?
Not so much what I do, and I was on a bit of a pretty spaced out sort of tangent when I was trying to do that, trying to really strip letters back to these fundamental geometric shapes and then see what was left kind of stuff. So I don't think my stuff would be your stereotypical taste over there at the time. But what I did like, what I really got out of it over there was this American thing to be involved with anything they perceive successful or interesting to them. What can I do? How can I help? I've got this wall you can paint, as opposed to the tall poppy here, and where I live, there's an element of that too.
Right.
Like, I joke about the fish and chip shops there, like possibly, like they have signs up like possibly the best fish and chip shop, not here like we'd state. Yeah, man, it's the #1 fish and chip joint.
Every country town's got the best pie of the year.
Yeah. And there it would always be maybe or something like that actually written, So yeah, but Americans, they want to jump on something successful or something they're really into, and so it was a wonderful thing of lots of opportunity. Mm-hmm. It was pretty exciting, and as a culture, I was like, good on yous. But if you're a loser over there, look out. Like a couple of times I stayed in the Tenderloin when I was over there in San Francisco, and that's hectic. Like even searching on your Wi-Fi, it's like the DEA van and stuff like that, And it's kind of like, I don't know whoever they are, I can't remember now, but some dude from one of the corners, was it Guatemalan or, it wasn't Colombian, where the such and such corner, the dealers, and it's just hectic, and you see people doing the wrongest stuff in the street, crackheads and stuff, and it's just like, so these kind of people are getting, like just dropping their pants and just right in front of you on the street and just snap. Anyway, and talking to a lot of the junkie, the guys there when we're painting the streets and stuff, and just their life stories, how they got to on the street. And it's just like, for a place that gives people that they perceive as doing something good a lot of opportunities and things, and being really against for it, there's not much. I feel that when people really slip through the cracks there.
For sure. And some of those people, I'm not saying all of them, but some of the people are happy living their lifestyle. They don't want to be part of normality or society.
Yeah.
They do that. But I think the biggest difference between the US and say, somewhere like here or most of Europe is healthcare, man. That's the biggest difference.
Yeah. And then you talk about these socialist democracies and things like this, and they're like, these are buzzwords that straight away they're going, oh, commie. You know, but I got talking with one writer over there, and I think it cost him, I think it was something like, it was a phenomenal amount just to have a child in the hospital. Yeah. Like there was even a fee for the midwife, a hallway fee or something, to carry the baby from one room to another was like exorbitant fee.
Yeah. And that's when your hat's got to go off to people that are over there that are participating in things like skateboarding, BMX, doing all this stuff. If they hurt themselves, they're not just going to the Royal Melbourne or the Alfred and getting a free, knee reco. They've got to pay all that money. Like it's crazy to think that people are taking that, engaging in that risk taking behaviour without that backup.
Yeah, and same with any creative pursuits. That like bands having a crack there, and they have to play so much in places that aren't paying or shitty conditions. Yeah, and I mean it makes bands really good because you have to. I guess you have to be playing better or be on your game. Mm-hmm. But where I'm at now, like the venues are funded by the government to put on underground music and things. Like they'll get big payouts each year to stay open. So it's not such a it doesn't have to be economically rationalised to create.
That's a forward thinking government that just cares about art though. Or just cares about having different aspects to have a creating, functioning society,
Yeah, I mean, these things are valued. That's like people aren't turning their nose up when they see panels, for example, because it's open to new things. And these people are the cutting edge of painting, since Renaissance or whatever,
Do you think that, is it just culturally different and just accepted different, that graffiti's just part of what happens on trains there? Or, like, it hasn't always been like that. It's obviously taken years to become just, all right, well, that's the train that's been painted. We just fucking leave it.
Yeah, and plus government spending on and changing things like that. It's hard for me to tell because I don't know anyone that isn't either a visual artist or an artist of some sort or an architect. Everyone I know seems to do those two things.
Probably also the circles you're mixing with as well.
Yeah, it's hard to judge, is what I think.
Yeah, it's like you talk to somebody who's not in the art scene, and if they work as a, I don't know, fucking librarian, they probably hang out with a lot of people that work in libraries. You know what I mean? You socialise with people that you want to fit in with.
Yeah. So, but even out in the trains, I haven't seen anyone disgusted or shaking their heads and that sort of thing. It's just background, Yeah,
it's just there.
Yeah.
So when you travelled to the US, did you go there before you went to Europe?
No.
You went to Europe first?
Yeah. And from there you're just able to travel anywhere. So it's so hard to get away from the prison island and escape, just get over that first stretch. But being in Europe, I could just fly anywhere and do so,
And it opens your eyes to a whole different graffiti landscape.
Yeah, different. Well, yeah, so many different cultures and approaches to it, Mm-hmm. And genres and things like that. Even like country to country, like if you take just highway bombing and street bombing, say somewhere like France, you're going to see all the silvers, the dubs kind of throw ups, that these replicas. You go to other countries, it might be an average style. Next country, you've hit that country because you're seeing really nice pieces along the highways, or you're driving to one country and there's, like say the Netherlands, for example, there's a guy that writes Same, and he writes really like nice, simple, really cool stuff. and he's got every highway in the country or what have you. So there'll just be different ways, and then there'll be different ways, and then and crossovers, because you got a lot of people intermixing different places, you know. Yeah. Like even on islands like Crete and stuff, you see, you know, then you see there's a lot of locals, but then there's also the tourists bombing and this kind of thing.
And there's a community approach to it. Like if you just go to someone else's city and just start bombing it, is that not the right thing to do? Do you reach out to writers there and then figure out, all right, you show us some spots, we'll do this in a respectful manner? Or do people just go free for all because they can move around so much?
I'd say it'd be a mix. There's certain places you wouldn't paint trains without local, like I think Berlin locals don't really appreciate you hitting trains unless maybe you're down with people and go along with it. But then if people are just going to do a piece in the city, it's always easy to get there's always Hall of Fames. It's not like writer-controlled walls like here, but you're going to expect your stuff's going to be gone, you know.
You get a photo and that's it. Be gone the next day.
Potentially, or it might sit there for a few weeks. I did a wall recently with Sab and Deviate, and they were non-locals and their pieces just stayed ages. Mine was gone over, I think, in a day, something like that.
Really?
But they kept them, I guess they were novel. Actually, that's happened with Deviate a few times over there, where his piece will just stay.
He's got that global respect.
It's also novel to have people outside of town or what have you. Mm-hmm. But then you'll get a bunch of kids doing a graffiti project or whatever from school or something, and they'll just come down and scribble over everything there, you know. So, yeah, I don't know, it just depends.
Yeah, you see that at the moment, like on Hosier Lane, where people just who don't do any form of art just go and get a spray can and just write their name, like for an Instagram photo. You're like, what are you doing? Like, it's just gross.
These spots are similar to that.
Yeah, I could, and then that would happen. Yeah. I guess. Yeah.
You know, and I've become a bit of a weekend warrior. I've got a child and my other trying to make my work full time during the days, and so yeah, I've become one of those old guys that painted these things. But it's very, I don't know if it's like that here, but it's very like you're a train rider or you're a this or you're that. I was doing a panel once, and some other writers came up behind our lookout and said, "Hey man, you know, because we're going to paint next, what have you, in the yard." And then they start reading my piece and they go, "But that's new. Isn't he a Hall of Famer? Like, what's he doing?" Like, it took them a little bit to sort of like, huh? What's he painting a train for? They didn't really understand. Oh, not understand it, but it's just more segregated. Whereas for us, that would be probably normal. Yeah, you know, that the old school thing of being up on the insides, the outsides, having the best piece you can have. You know, trying to have quality, quantity, like our old DMA thing of having that quality, quantity, this sort of thing. It was just like, huh? You know, like there's a lot of action painting now, like doing it for the action, as they say. Yeah. And but then you talk to OGs in Europe, they'll be like, I wouldn't do that if I had the time in the yard. I'd rather do an end-to-end of field anthropes or something like that, you know, rather than do something terrible, you know. But just for the action of it. I don't know, it's a very different mindset.
It's also because now anyone can have a GoPro on their head, you know what I mean? And they can film it, they can put it on their social media, they can get the likes. They're thinking of it in a different capacity. When originally people were doing it to hope to get a photo, you know, to think about having a camera on your head and filming the process of you doing that now is just totally different.
Yeah, it was closer to home, I guess, yeah. More you and your friends.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And sometimes you would never even get the photos, so you just did it and did something that you were happy with. Where now I think people are documenting the whole process.
Yeah, I don't know. Just different time.
You gifted me this bowl. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your pottery, man?
So I was a young writer getting in trouble a lot. Our house had just been raided, and we moved up to the hills, up to Dandenongs for a couple of weeks, and then we were going to come straight back down the city. And then I think, like I was saying to someone the other day, then the bongs just sucked us into the couches over the hills for another decade and a half, and we're stuck in the hills. So I ended up living up in the mountains there. Really like it. Nice mix of anything from bikers to hippies to this and that. Like a really nice broad culture and working people. My girlfriend at the time was also a train rider. Pretty courageous train rider.
Yep.
And
I'd love to get a female rider on at some stage. They're very hard to find.
Yeah. And it just got me a thing for a short course, and then I ended up getting into making pots in my early 20s. And the teacher I started to work with, it's like not an apprenticeship, but that kind of thing. I'd just tag along and be annoying and hang out at a place all day and learn the whole process. And learn what studio pottery was all about. And then I went off to TAFE for a few years because I think Melbourne Uni's course wasn't as serious, hands-on, really, at the time. It was part teacher course, what have you. So I went to TAFE, and then a few people around the world that I admired, I went to their studios and learned or got to help here and there, help do firings, help do this sort of thing. And I'm sort of as deeply involved in that as I am or was with writing, sort of thing.
You took the graffiti mindset to that.
Well, actually, making forms with ceramics is very similar to trying to put an outline on a piece. It's you got your body's in the air, like how'd you put it? You're making these movements that are very similar. Like if you're not hesitating and trying to do a curve or something in a piece, it feels very the same as far as making nice form. Mm-hmm. So I definitely brought that across.
Yeah.
But for me, it was also, I come out of the sitting going, man, as a human, if everything stopped now, I'm useless. I can't make my own things. I'm only reasonably good at gardening and that. I just had this period where, like, how does a human learn and to be able to survive again? Like I did a permaculture design course for sustainable agriculture, for broad scale farming right down to small things. I got really interested in how do you
be self-sufficient sort of thing.
Basically, yeah, but yeah, just get skills that are human, like just things we've lost. Like if the lights go out and the internet goes out, look out. Like we'd just be fighting over supermarket food till that goes off. I don't know. I was just curious. I'm not a prepper by any means, but ceramics definitely had that attraction. And
did this coincide with a bit of a spiritual shift in you, sort of thing?
Well, even in our teens, like first a Krishnamurti book got passed around in our teens when I was still in town. I remember M1 had it, passed it on. I think Cure had one, gave it to me. I think he wrote "Don't Get Brainwashed" or something. But anyway, so I started reading all his books and a couple of Buddhism books that I had, and then a really pivotal one actually. And then I started practicing a bit later on. That was the first time in my life that I'd never had drugs or anything for a few years. No drink. No. Black tea was as bad as I was, And then so that all changed, however. But so the Buddhism facet of my life's been very important. I've always been like even when we're taking psychedelics as youngsters and things, I've always been curious about the nature of reality and these kind of things. It's kind of my top priority, I guess, actually.
Yep.
And so I became a ceramicist, and it actually does tie in a bit with the work because it's partially Japanese inspired sort of thing, if you would include Zen. Like a lot of Zen monks did set the taste for historical work I like, and so it could also feed back in, So yeah, a few years ago I came out of doing 3 years, 3 month, 3 day, really solid practice, where that was my life. After I'd done sort of maybe a year and a half of aesthetic stuff in my basement, sort of really getting back to the fundamentals of who a person is, minus all this identity and how we call ourselves. You know, I'm a writer, this, it's just nonsense. You know, these thoughts. Strip back them, then did a really long, intensive practice where that was basically the day job, the night job, any time I wasn't looking after my son job. And then got back into my ceramics again with that really clear slate. And trying to make work really just from the body and disregard the mind. You know, that, like I was saying earlier, that walk downhill sort of thing. Just explore, let things come out, and just really just learn from the work, using really fundamental materials too, like ashes and really simple clays, not using too many really refined materials unless I have to. And
make it as natural as possible.
Yeah, so it really fulfills the scientific part in myself too, you know, and also creative and making work. And I don't know how employable I am. I've had lots of back injuries for a lot of years. Broke my back playing soccer, and or fractured 5. And I've had difficulty since my late 20s.
Yeah.
So to be able to work for yourself it's become a bit of a necessity at this stage.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. It sounds like you're just as passionate about that as you are with graffiti, if not more.
Yeah, I've been pretty in depth with it. Like I used to make all my clays from ground up. I'd dig a lot of my own materials. I'd do as much as I can. Like that, I like that alchemy. And such simple materials, and you can make beautiful historical pieces. I've really looked back into different periods, like before China had, like, as people were investigating work and as people were investigating how to actually make glazes, high temperature glazes for the first time in history sort of thing, I've sort of gone through their processes and using the same materials and trying to learn, like, it's back to the fundamentals, going back to it's like I was saying earlier about looking at the source material. So I'm really into making from the source material. I'm not trying to make my style pots. Once I come out of that 3.5 year meditation, 3 months, I was kind of like, I could see work that was all about them and their personality and, oh, this is my work. And college and everything trains you to be like that for the marketplace. And to me, it was just like, ugh. I just wasn't into a lot of these aspects of people I'm trying to almost not find myself in that stuff and see what is there. You know, like the materials do enough as it is. And all these traditional shapes, that they become pretty worldwide, you know, like a thing to contain a certain liquid or a certain, just to contain anything has this, an abstract form that humans have invented. Like our very first abstract stuff's coming from us, that's come from us. That's not emulating nature, was ceramics, you know.
Yeah.
And these basic needs of humans around the world's kind of pretty similar. Sure, we've got different food types and things, and we've got different cultural things going on in the work, but there's an underlying factor across the board which I really love. Like all the different cultures and different places I've been, you can still see the basics. A jar has got the basic fundamentals of a jar, etc., or a bowl.
Bowl's a bowl, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's cultures that are very specific about what this and that is for, or culturally specific things like you needed a kind of certain way to put a lid on, or for storage jars, particularly in Southeast Asia, there's you can see differences in things, but it's the same.
Man, I love the way that you dive in so deep and then you really look at stuff deeper than what it's been presented to you, and figure out where it came from and how you can figure out your own sort of method from that. It's super cool.
Yeah, and hopefully it's not too personal like that too. Like I just want a pot to, like, I don't sign any of that sort of stuff. So I
was looking for
I just want them to be unto themselves. And if I can get removed and be sitting from position back and seeing it for what it is, I'm happy, you know. I don't want to. Yeah, I'd rather explore the process. It's like I was saying earlier, pieces, you explore the process and just see what comes out the other side. Except that's in public, you can't hide from it. And I still post them online anyway, even if they're a bit awkward.
Well, have you tried to bring your two passions together and sort of do pieces made out of
Yes. I did sculptural letters for a bit, yeah.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes and no.
Because you're not doing it now, so I'm guessing you didn't love it.
Yeah, no, it's consuming. I'd rather sit down and make 30 bowls and watch that progression throughout the day and just see what they're giving me and move with that than make one sculptural piece or something. I got a bit turned off the notion of art or one considering themselves an artist. I think I'm a craftsperson even with pieces, you know. I'm not like some super talented writer or this or that. I have to really craft and work hard at things, you know.
Yep.
And so doing that sort of stuff, I was a bit, I don't know, like art. I don't really want to do artworks. That's because that's got nothing to do with me. Even putting that label on something you make, you know, like that's up to the viewer. And the time I spent in America, there were some times when I was watching some artists and what they had to do for their brand and who to be noticed, that I was a bit like, ugh.
Sell your soul a bit too much.
Yeah, people like, oh, there's Martha with a camera. You know, and making sure they got in a Martha Cooper shot because maybe that would be used for this or that, or just...
Be nice to just meet her and just say hello.
Well, these people knew, but they also saw just seeing a lot of different things like that where it's just like, it just wasn't for me. And I realise there are artists that don't act like that, but these were people I really admired from America. I'm like, oh, really? Wow, you would, you know. So I got turned off artists. It's been very can be some artists close to me have been really self-centered about their needs as an artist and at the cost of other things.
Right, they're compromising too much.
No, just if it costs relationship with people or how people are interacting. You know, like it's what's the word for it? It's transactional sometimes with those relationships, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not saying that with my friends. My friends are my friends, but I've seen the transactional nature going on, and it's just it wasn't for me. I'd rather do nothing. I got to a point with art. It's like, no, I'm just making it with my child, and that's if I was making fun, creative things, it was just things. It was just things with him.
But that is the beauty, that if you don't make art your profession, then the art still stays for you and you're not thinking about it on a commercial level, so you're not losing the passion for it.
Yeah. And I went to this, if anyone ever gets a chance, this Outsider Art Museum in Baltimore. And it's just a museum full of just outsiders, just from either psych wards or different things, people just making just because they love making things. Yeah. The craziest, wildest stuff. It's the best museum I've ever seen.
I'll have to check that out.
Other than ceramic museums. But yeah, if you ever in Baltimore, do it to it. It was just such, it's the best thing.
Man, you're obviously super passionate about the ceramic stuff. That's always been there. Do you look at taking it to another level? Like, are you just happy slowly building your skill set and building that? You know, it's a business as well, yeah?
Yeah. I'm trying to buy land this year so I can have a proper wood kiln to really make the work that I want to make. I'm just making. I'm also just storing work. I don't push the business side as much as I should.
Right.
Like I used to have a pottery here and I used to teach here in Australia. Taught for like 7 years just before I left. I was pretty tired and also maybe tired of that sort of tertiary education culture a bit that was going on, a little bit of politicking amongst teachers and things.
Yep.
And I didn't have to sign my last contract and I went, you know. Yeah. But I would like to be involved in a bit. I kind of like the idea. I've purposely gone around the potters I love who've also been trained from traditional people. And I kind of like the idea of a thread passing through the work. Like I look at handles from the medieval period onwards, from Germany and England, etc. And although I haven't been apprenticed to anyone, that I've been able to be around and work with people that have carried that on, and just to feel like amongst that lineage, that sort of thing, is kind of enough to pass on, because you see a lot of ceramics was defunded in a lot of tertiary places, what have you. So to really have that stuff maybe rub off would be enough for me, you know, or for people to still see it and maybe learn it, what have you.
If you had one legacy to leave, would it be your writing legacy or your pottery legacy? If you had to pick one thing that people would remember you for.
I don't know. I don't care if they...
I don't care what they remember.
Man, no. It's just in 100 years, no one's going to even know you ever existed.
But if you you want to leave a mark on there enough that people will, to an extent.
I don't know. Do you? Maybe, yeah. I don't know, man. It's just like, do you know your great grandparents or your great parents, even their names or where they came from or what they were into or what they did?
I did, but yeah, because I was born so young in the
right.
Yeah.
It's just that kind of history gets lost pretty quick, you know.
But that's why you got to leave your mark.
I don't know. Well, the piecing's so ephemeral; it's all just gone anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe if people have pots and then they wonder what these people were doing back then. I've got a piece. I've got a pot that was made in the 1190s, and it's. I've got a lot of old stuff like that, but this one particular pot, you can see where the potter's finger marks were when they were dipping the pot in, and then you just see that okay, there was another person doing what I do, but probably in a more no nonsense, less arty way than what a modern studio. You know, just someone working, churning them out, and there's that potter's finger mark. You know, and you're left to wonder about that, and that kind of that's enough, isn't it? Kind of.
Yeah.
No, it's just you're part of this long thread of things. That for me that's cool.
Just to have done it, just to have been there, and just to have
I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
it's a process. You know, it's about the meaning in your own time, because otherwise you're going to get caught up in all your nasty little things you can do, like for someone like me with an addictive personality, I'd just rather find purpose and meaning in things like this, rather than go down those kind of deep rabbit holes of using drugs or drinking or eating, whatever.
Yeah, but everyone that I speak to that has an addictive personality generally swaps one addiction for another one, and that's okay as long as the one might be art or pottery or music or whatever it is that replaces. Or a lot of people take drugs out of their life and then hit the gym, and that's their new addiction.
Yeah,
so it seems to be you replace one with the other. It's a pretty common thing.
Yeah, well, I think that's a bit of benefit. The benefit with meditation is just actually being able to watch these things come and just try to set a vantage point, like outside of the river, outside of the flow of it, and go, okay, there you go. Look at that, you know.
Yep.
And,
meditation's hard, though. Did you really struggle with it at the start?
The very first course I did was back in, there's a sort of school of meditation, not a school, but a style called Vipassana, and it's not true Vipassana. It's kind of like elements of it. But the first time doing that, you know, for 10 days, for the first 10-dayer I did, being able to sit still, be that focused for 10 full days, not talk, not do anything, just really stay with it, that kind of work. Day 4 there, I would have just traded it back for my farm job or any hard labour. You know, it's so much easier than doing that. You know, I'd challenge anyone to push themselves over that hurdle to have that kind of focus.
But you think when you got about halfway, you sort of...
I did the day 4. I think I actually asked to go home.
Right.
To the teacher, and like have a daily meeting where they would just test you. And I'm glad I didn't. They said, no, keep going. And stuck with that, and then it became a sort of a lifestyle of practice and that, and being super focused on all that stuff, which can do wonders for addiction and personality and that if you're starting to become aware of why, you know.
So what kind of practices does that entail day to day? You just you do try and do 30 minutes a day of that sort of meditation, like now as when you're, just living your normal life?
Yeah, I would try to do morning. I changed style. I'm really interested in a thing called Dzogchen, the Great Perfection style sort of thing. Came out of these really fascinating Tibetan yogi living up by himself, whatever. But I'm more interested in that sort of thing. I think it's a much deeper, profound set of practices, what have you. But which it's kind of also an all-day thing, really.
Right, it's a constant state of mind.
One would hope so.
Yeah. I'm just trying to learn.
No. I when I'm practicing a lot, I don't know. I was going through a big period of getting up at 5 a.m, practicing 6:30, 7, whatever, and get the kids' stuff ready for school, and meanwhile do all this other stuff afterwards. And this sort of practice was so healthy for just man, I had my day done by 9 o'clock. You know, it was wonderful, and sort of trying to practice, and then maybe during the day, and then at night. That sort of, it's fluctuated throughout my life. You know, like I had a period when I hadn't been practicing for a long time, and I was smoking weed, and I wanted, oh man, what are you doing? I've got to get back into practice, you know. And then a Thai friend that was a monk, I was going over to Thailand. This was before it was legalised there, and I was like, there's no way I'm having anything to do with it in Thailand, man.
Thai prisons, nah.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Yeah, and he goes, oh, you can't sit for your whatever. He goes, just 5 minutes a day then, man, just 5 minutes. And that was a profound difference. I was like, okay, it's back to 5 minutes. Oh wow, I could almost stay focused for 20 seconds or 10 seconds, or and eventually, and then stretch it out, like not the pressure, not the normal, pressure one would put upon themselves to do things as some work or something, and then just become easier, and I don't know,
Have you,
major difference, to my life.
Obviously, you've found peace with that. Would you say you're a practicing Buddhist? Is that what you would categorize yourself?
If it was on a census and I was being truthful, yeah, yeah.
But you're
just those qualities. But I think those qualities across the board go with all the sorts of all the organised religions, or just common sense across the board. Like, I don't consider Buddhism it's not a religion as such. It's more of a set of practices that worked for somebody.
Yep.
Who said to others, just give it a crack. If it works, it doesn't. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, just see for yourself. It's a see for yourself thing. And there's been so many people that have done these practices to look at the nature of reality, what have you, or natures of self, that they're just working textbooks for getting your shit together, man.
Is it hard not to push it onto other people because it works for you and you see the benefits? Like, it must be hard because you're like, man, just try it, but you don't want to be too pushy,
I think people are only get didactic with things when they're learning things. That's my experience with that kind of thing. If anyone's really excited about what they're learning, then they try to push it onto people. But once they've settled into what they're doing,
That makes total sense.
That's what I've noticed anyway.
Because once you've found your inner peace, it's like I'm not worried about those guys. They have to find their own way.
Well, I don't know, if I get really excited. I've just noticed that with myself. If I get really excited about something, I want to prattle on. Man, that new record from such and such, you got to hear it,
That's human nature,
Yeah. So people are going to do that with what they consider spiritual or practice or whatever. I don't know. That's such a buzzword, though. I'm hesitant to use it just because what that would get
Well, that word's been
What- what-
bastardised
what
to a
would that-
extent. Yeah.
what that would fire up in people. That's why I sort of think it was as a practice for sort of just settling mind and then exploring,
Yeah.
you know, like just the nature of things.
What have you got coming up while you're we're at the start of a brand new year, man? What's 2025 got in store for you?
I'm just going to buy land and set up the kiln as my, not much. Just keep doing dad stuff, you know. So as you know,
Yeah.
that last, just, who knows, man.
The dad thing for a lot of people that have been, you know, wayward males, you become a dad, it changes everything though, doesn't it? It really does. And it sounds like such a cliche thing that I heard people say that before I had a son, but it really does, like instantly it changes your whole sort of mentality and how you think.
I spent a bit of time looking at my relationship with my dad and what I wanted, what I didn't want to happen to my son. And I tried my best to just do that and give him room to move, right?
Yeah.
And let him find himself so he's not spending his whole teens trying to find himself through other things.
Yeah.
And getting in a pickle and wasting all his time rather than, just let him... Yeah, it's a change it for me, but all the concern goes to them, doesn't it? You kind of become irrelevant, right? To a degree, you know?
Yeah.
You think?
It's just, I'm walking my son down the street before and, you know, car looks a bit thin and I'm just already thinking, I'm going to push him out of the way, I'm going to jump this way. It just changes your whole mindset of, you know, how when you become a dad, just like, I start to think, as someone who's been reasonably selfish, I start to think really selfless. You know what I mean? You put other people first.
Yeah, and you couldn't have it any other way now.
You couldn't, and people can't comprehend that sort of having content. I don't want to sound preachy, but it does change your mind.
I made sure I stuck to things like writing and things and could see somebody that wasn't. I don't want to, as much as I've kept some certain aspects of self away from him for now. I didn't want to change too much. Like, okay, my dad goes and paints and he goes out and plays music at night and this and that, and just to see somebody still in their thing, you know, I think that's also important. Like, I didn't want to get to just this is what a dad does, you know. So I had to hopefully I've done enough of that. You know, he's come to shows at venues and stuff as a little one and loved it, and gets to do all those sort of things, which is hopefully inspiring. You know, for him, and he comes out and does his pieces in his way, and I don't even control that, and you can't anyway.
He does graph pieces.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's been trying them since he was little, before he could have enough hand strength to push the caps down. He used to always be two-handed, and he's done a few over time, really loves it, and he won't listen to me. I've had a bit of shadow on that, a bit of 3D. Don't tell me what to do, you know. So but he's got a really wacky, creative little way of painting. I've seen other people want to really put pressure on the how-tos to do it for youngsters, but I kind of like that he's just got this freaky style and ideas about how he paints, you know.
Man, but
it's great fun to see.
Like I was saying, people, it's really hard to unlearn stuff, so let him just learn in his own way. Yeah,
and I can see improvements on the pieces or what have you, what I would do, but no. I arrived to pick him up from school one day before he was allowed to walk home by himself, and the school had given all the kids in his class black books to draw in, but and I rock up and there's like a little graffiti crew and they've all got little throw-up alphabets in their black books and all this. And they've all got tags and then they've got a crew name and all this sort of stuff. I had nothing to do with it. I just rocked up at school and it was a proud dad moment, you know. It was awesome, man. It's like, oh, so what's your crew called, you know? And what's everyone's tags? And there's two of them that are still into it, him and his mate.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super cool.
It was the same with b-boying. He came back, he was with his mum in Paris and he came back one day when he was really little and it's like, I saw this stuff and he saw b-boys just making money on the street dancing, you know, And so he got into that also independently.
Yeah. I'm sure the influences are there around the house a little bit, you know?
Yeah, but he didn't know about b-boying.
Okay.
Hey, we're getting into some dad talk, aren't we? We're
Oh,
doing
well,
dad
yeah,
stuff.
interesting. No, but it's funny that my son, he's got people who are constantly around doing graffiti, you know, like there's musicians around, like he has the opportunity to do anything, you know, that he sort of wants to do creatively. There's people that are around, but you don't want to push them, you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
want to sort of just have that stuff there. There's a lot of skateboards around my house. Every now and then he picks it up. You're like, okay, I don't want to push him to it, you know?
Yeah, we've had that with music too. Like he learned garage band, you know, and I'm sort of like, well, normally you'd sort of go like 4 beats here, like in this bar, and then 4 beats. And he's like, no, like I'm going to do it how it sounds right for me. And it's just like these sort of 11 and just weird electronica and stuff, you know.
Yeah. But that's the thing, like with music, and that's another one we're talking about different rules. Music has set rules, but and for something that's such a subjective practice, people seem to stick to those rules a lot because you can tell when something's got 5 beats in a bar instead of 4. You know what I mean? Like you can tell.
If you got to work with someone else too, it's, you know, that sort of stuff's important in styles, isn't it? To be able to play with people.
Yeah.
But you know, he just wants to do soundtracks like on gaming. You know, he just wants his soundtrack, and so I was like, no, don't show me how to put the drums in. I'm not interested. I'll make this with my synth. Into the Mac, I want ambient, like this sort of ambient orchestral stuff he's into. You know, but then he'll rip out a record like Electric Wizard or something super heavy and just laugh his head off at how heavy it is, you know. Like he's learned how to put my records on the turntable, or he'll ask to hear some Sleep, or, you know, some really heavy stuff, or even Saints and things like that, you know. So mix it up.
Yeah. So while we're talking about music, do you want to tell us about your sort of musical journey and your current band, or are you guys still like what's going on there?
No, we've stopped. But
Okay.
yeah, it's a garage rock, garage punk sort of band over there. You know, I don't know, it's a normal thing, playing shows. And I've been into bass since, I don't know, maybe 1990, something like that or whatever, you know. Like I'd heard a bit of, yeah, like I think I was saying earlier, I heard a bit of things like Fugazi, what have you, and it's just absolute eye-opener, you know.
Yeah.
These kind of records where I was like, I don't know whether I like it or not when I first heard them, and that's the place you want to be in when you hear, you know, when you hear something, it's automatically, that's just good, doesn't tend to last long, well, that's bad, but there's somewhere in between, it's like, what's going on, you know, that's...
But I want to hear it again.
That's the interesting point, you know. So I sort of got into stuff like that, but I've still had that hip hop sort of bit of soul bass player sort of thing going on in the background. In, you know, like I've had times when people are just like play rude notes, you know, punk, you know, like 16 note. But I just want to also, I've got that sort of old hip hop thing in me too, that it's like if you could do a soul punk bass line, I probably would.
For sure. But so are you going to keep playing music outside of the band now, though? Just for yourself?
I do. I've still got amps and stuff down in my Pottery, actually.
Yeah.
And I'll play a little bit, but I've always done a bit of like, if I'm in a band or in a crew, it has total commitment, because that's how DMA worked, you know. It was kind of you're all in, and it's really hard to get a full band like that. It's, you know, it's like it's instead of a 2-way relationship, like, you know, you've got a 4-way relationship or what have you. So it's with that kind of push that I want, that I know makes things work, like how DMA functioned or something. I'm a bit like that with music. So bands at the moment, like, I don't know. I'm also starting to feel a bit like I'm used to writers. You'll paint with someone that's 16 or someone that's 60 or someone that's 30 or all over the place. And I don't think about age. And although over there's a lot of older punters at shows, sometimes, and I hadn't really dawned on me, but I watched some other guys in the band, in other bands, friends, and I think, oh, I'm the old guy in the room. So I kind of want to chill a bit, and I'm just trying to focus on pots, so the music's sort of taken a side thing. Instead of doing three things at once and being a jack of all trades, which I've really liked, because then you've sort of got a certain lack of perfectionist or whatever in everything you do. So a touch of naivety, although I'm trying to be neat with what I do in general. Now I'm kind of just like, maybe I'll try to do something really well, like maybe just try to make ceramics full time. Like I haven't barely even been listening to punk and sort of things, you know. I'll be going into this sort of old folk and Americana and things like that when I'm potting now instead of, I go through phases, you know.
Yeah.
But
I think that's healthy too.
Yeah.
People that just stick to the one genre of music for their whole life, you're like, fuck, open your ears, you know, like explore.
Yeah, you're not doing yourself a service, and then you get really caught in what's but this is it. And same with writers, like no, a writer's got to be like this. Like, man, like there's a lot of hip hop guys that'll just be like, no, this is what it is, and this is the framework. But everyone that I admire that's really like doing crazy stuff, or the vast majority, although they might listen to hip hop and that, they're punk guys or metal guys or this or that are, for me, are doing a lot of the best pieces around the world, you know. So variety doesn't kill anyone.
Yeah.
But it's a real teen thing to want to define yourself. Like it's to really strongly define yourself in some sort of subgenre, I guess, right?
Yeah. I think it's like a tribalism thing, like to sort of align yourself with something that makes you bigger than just one person.
Yeah, and you're old enough and you get old enough and wise enough to realise, you know.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Will you ever stop painting though, do you think?
Well, my body's the main thing that's been stopping me, but I don't know, I don't see a reason to. It's fun to get it. I think it's pretty funny when people go past, if I'm painting, you know, they go past on their bike or whatever and look at this guy like with a grey beard or something painting and be like, huh? You know, for people who've never seen it, must be a strange phenomenon.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. People always think from the outside of the graffiti scene, or people that just don't think about graffiti, they all think that it's done by teenage kids. You're like, man, these people are in their 50s, 60s, 40s, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's not teenage kids. If they've been doing it for 30 years, do the maths. They're not fucking teenage kids, you know?
I remember a writer telling me his dad's a successful, large-scale, figurative, beautiful, makes really beautiful, large work. And he was just dismissing writing as just, it's just this superficial nonsense, you know. It's just you write your name and you do it with this and that, and, you know, there's decorative elements and that's it. It's like a decorative art. But I think if we're pushing piecing properly, it's a whole set of language, and then how you use the language. You know, like an MC from the 80s can be it sounds like they're talking about killing each other, but it's just really
lyrical violence.
Yeah, it's a wonderful way of jamming on an idea, you know, and it can be. I want to see pieces where, without figurative elements, I think I don't know why letters aren't. Pity enough people don't keep continuing for long enough to be able to express themselves to a point where you can do pieces and people are like, you know, where people can be brought to tears like they are in a museum or whatever it is, to get real feeling off things. I've really looked into things, even with simple things like throw-ups. What part of the letter overlaps the other, and what response do you get from it? Is it more aggressive like this? Is it less? Is it is it happier because this section is over or under? What's the you know, and all these little effects that build up to an emotional response to something. You know, like it's easy just to do an aggressive looking piece, you know, with angles and italics kind of lean, these kinds of things. But there's so much more to be explored, and like any serious fine arts painter is going to be painting until over their whole lifetime, till they're into their late 80s, or they can't hold a brush, got arthritis, whatever the heck it is. That really develop, and you see that body of work over all that time. To see writers, what they could do by the time they're in their 80s with letter form, you know. It could be quite amazing, but we can. It's so easy to. We're just painting with our mates and having a laugh on the day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that this sort of thing comes up a lot.
The camaraderie is what seems to be the main thing that holds the people together, I see.
Yeah, and just being comedians on the day painting, you know. I paint a lot alone, so I get to sort of the mental space to consider these, like what I'm doing there. And a lot of the originators of writing, we're looking at writing, having that fun seriously, you know. And I think the more that you put in, the more fun you can get out too, you know, because it's not just a superficial buzz that you replicate. It's like, you know, can be profound or as silly as you want, you know. Like Tame's letters, would he would say, "Oh no, my stuff's not serious," but because they're fun little things with expressions and all little wacky, like fun things going on. But there's also times when what we're doing in the late 80s and that they were deeply symbolic and had all these elements going on that was storytelling in another, just a different way of, kind of like storytelling, I guess, a bit or something. But the things were much deeper. There was life story in them and stuff, you know. And I don't think people would, I mean, I don't now, but wouldn't consider those elements in writing now. Mm-hmm. Like
it's been homogenized out sort of thing. Like it's
things keep getting stripped down to base and base and base without there being people sitting on the bench pointing fingers, you know.
And you feel that lack of accountability has watered it down.
I don't see close community like that, and regional close community. You know,
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, but who do you think is a Melbourne graffiti king, whether it's style or just for the greater sense of the word? Who would you say?
Oh, on the spot, old or new?
Well, yeah, whatever, however you want to look at it.
Oh, there's lots of things I like. I don't know. If we're talking fundamentally about style, like, because Bombers for me is a whole different set, you know, of judgments, I guess. I don't know. You got to give it to Accused these days for doing these master burners still. Like when everyone's trying to do a quick. I'll use his cricket terms. When everyone's probably trying to play a 20 over game, he's in it for the test match, right?
Yeah.
And he's not stopping to, like, these big production burners you don't see worldwide much at all, you know, like. And they've got their own. He's got his own set of things and language going through that he's been growing for a long time. But he's close to me, so
you might be a bit biased.
That's an obvious bias. I've always enjoyed seeing stuff. People like Sab, of course. People I haven't had too much to do with, but great. And Plea. I've always been really interested in what they're up to. And to go back, the classics, the Disguise and Murder for his thing outside of the writing discussion is just this other thing, It's just super interesting.
And he's great at pushing the conversation now about what graffiti is, what art is, and, his online presence.
Yeah. Yeah. Writing's writing, the other stuff's, good work with a can of paint as well. It's just a different thing. What's going on with the muralism he's been discussing, I think. Mm-hmm. But yeah, for me, it's a different kettle of fish. Done by writers, but that's a whole separate discussion I know nothing about,
Yeah, it seems to be a lot of people that come out of graffiti that get into the mural side of it, it kind of loses. It seems to lose the passion for them a little bit, going overboard with the whole mural stuff. It's a different thing altogether, you know.
I guess it's the day job side of it, you know.
Yeah.
And then you can relax, have a paint. I've got a friend. I've got a friend, say in Holland, in the Netherlands, called Chess, Dr. Chess, and he's the most realistic, insane artist. Incredible what he can do. I can't understate the stuff. And then when he goes piecing, he'll put up a very neat first outline, make sure his letters are structured really well, and then just paint it, and it's just loose. And that's like day job, weekend or night job, you know. It's just these dramatic differences, and then the rest is just put up, and it looks kind of like unneat comparatively, you know. And I see that with friends here that have to put in big hours painting these serious things for their income, and then their piece they can just relax and
they can get loose with that though.
Yeah, but I'm positive they do is, you know, just see it as it's just a separate thing with the can, you know. Mm-hmm. It's like it's like these old street art versus writing debates or whatever. It's just a different ball game. It's just something else.
Yeah. Well, I see that sort of stuff with people that do the murals and then do it's like if you're in a band, you go do your corporate gig, so then you can go write your own songs. You know what I mean? Like it's a sort of like they're different.
Yeah, your jazz trio and your punk band aren't going to cross over too much, maybe, or something,
You've got to
or whatever.
Make your money, or you've got to
Yeah.
For sure, man. It's been an awesome chat, and I'm glad that I got to meet you and we got to talk about your story. And I'm sure there's lots that we've missed, but hopefully we can jump back in next time you're in town. Potentially we can talk about where you've taken your pottery stuff, where you've taken your artwork, and where you've taken your music and your dad life too, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It's been good to listen to you from afar. You know, like I've actually learned a lot about MCs over here and things through your show.
Awesome.
Having got away from hip hop a bit, and then and only rely on other people just getting bits of information to hear your show and actually learn the history here has been fascinating. And tie-ins too, like you'll be talking about an original DMA guy like Item on another episode in a different context that I didn't know about and stuff. So It's good to get, thanks is what I'm saying.
No worries, man. I'm glad that people like it. And I think it's really important that all this stuff is documented, you know, and just so it is there and people know the history. And if they want to learn, they can figure out who that person is behind the music or behind the piece or whatever it is.
Yeah. Actually, even with friends, like with someone like Prod, hearing a bit more of his story from his perspective, I had no idea about that sort of stuff. It's been great.
Yeah,
and other stuff. I'm not talking about just the hip hoppy things, but it's been great.
Oh, I'm glad that you tuned in.
And you had Mawson on too. I thought that was
he's
terrific.
Down this way. Yeah, he's the Stiffies, man. They're smashing it.
Yeah, love them. I got to see him in what country was it? Belgium, and it was just it was nuts.
Yep,
Funny.
Yeah, man. He's down this way. There's a nice, cool community down here now. Like he's been down here for a while, but we're sort of finding all the writers that are down here and all the musicians and kind of trying to link up. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's great.
Right. Well, man, thanks for coming all the way.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And I think that there's some really, really cool nuggets of information in there and some great stories, man. I appreciate you sharing them with us.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Awesome.